Imagine this. You're boarding a plane. In exactly 31 seconds after takeoff, that plane will crash, killing all 273 people on board. But you won't be on it, not because you changed your mind, not because you got sick, because your alarm didn't go off even though you installed fresh batteries the night before, because you hit every single red light on the way to the airport, a statistical impossibility, because a traffic accident blocked the highway you take every day, an accident that happens once in a decade on that route, because you arrived at the gate 3 minutes late and the agent refused to let you board. You're alive. 272 other people are dead. Coincidence? The mathematical probability of all those obstacles appearing in sequence to make one specific person miss one specific flight is 1 in 47 million. Now imagine 6 other passengers miss that same flight through equally bizarre chains of bad luck. 7 people who should have died but didn't. 7 people reality saved by breaking its own rules. This isn't a thought experiment. This happened, and it's happening more often, to more people, in ways that can't be explained. Welcome to the phenomenon of impossible coincidences that save lives, where reality itself bends to prevent certain deaths, and nobody knows why. James Rodriguez was 32 years old on May 25, 1979, when a series of seemingly random failures saved his life. He'd booked a ticket on American Airlines Flight 191 3 months in advance. Morning departure from Chicago O'Hare to Los Angeles. Business trip. James was a sales representative for an electronics company. He traveled frequently. This was routine. The night before the flight, James set 2 alarms, his bedside clock and his wristwatch. He checked them both before sleeping, made sure the clock had fresh batteries, wound the watch. He'd learned long ago never to rely on a single alarm. Too important. Can't miss flights. But that morning, neither alarm went off. James woke up naturally at 7:47 a.m., 45 minutes later than planned. His flight boarded at 8:30. He had 43 minutes to get to the airport. He jumped out of bed, no time to shower, threw on clothes, grabbed his bag. The drive to O'Hare normally took 30 minutes in light traffic. Morning traffic was heavier, but he could make it if everything went smoothly. Nothing went smoothly. James pulled out of his driveway at 7:52, hit a red light at the first intersection, sat there drumming his fingers, watching precious seconds tick away. Light turned green, drove 2 blocks, another red light, then another, then another. 6 consecutive red lights. James had driven this route hundreds of times. He'd never hit more than 2 reds in a row. 6 was impossible. The lights weren't timed that way. But every single one turned red just as he approached. At 8:04, James merged onto the highway. Traffic was moving. He pressed the accelerator, weaving between lanes, trying to make up lost time. Then he saw it. Brake lights. Miles of brake lights, stretching ahead like a river of red. Traffic stopped completely. James sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the clock. 8:07, 8:09, 8:12. Nobody moving. He turned on the radio. Traffic report. Major accident blocking all lanes. Estimated clearance time, 40 minutes. James felt his chest tighten. He was going to miss his flight. 10 years of business travel, he'd never missed a flight. But the universe seemed determined to make him miss this one. At 8:17, traffic started crawling, 5 miles per hour, 10. James took the next exit, followed his GPS through side streets, trying to find a faster route. The GPS led him through residential neighborhoods, adding distance but promising to avoid the highway backup. Except the GPS route hit construction. Road closed. Detour signs pointing in a direction that took him even further from the airport. James swore, turned around, found another street. At 8:31, he was still 15 minutes from O'Hare. His flight was boarding. At 8:36, he pulled into the airport parking structure, grabbed his bag, ran. Through the terminal, past security, which was miraculously light that morning, sprinting to the gate. He arrived at 8:41. The door was closed. The plane was still there, visible through the window, but the jetway had detached. James ran to the desk out of breath. "I need to board, please. I know I'm late, but the plane hasn't left." The gate agent looked at him with sympathy. "I'm sorry, sir. Once the door is closed, we can't reopen it. FAA regulations. You'll have to take the next flight," James begged, explained about the alarm, the traffic, the detours. The agent shook her head. Rules were rules. James stood there, defeated, watching through the window as Flight 191 pushed back from the gate. At 8:59 a.m., James watched the plane taxi to the runway. He was angry, frustrated. His meetings in LA would have to be rescheduled. His boss would be furious, all because of a series of unbelievable obstacles that appeared out of nowhere that morning. The plane lifted off at 9:04. James turned away from the window, heading toward the ticket counter to rebook, when he heard screaming. He spun around. Through the terminal window, he saw smoke. Black smoke rising from somewhere beyond the runway. People were running. Alarms started blaring. Airport staff were shouting into radios. James didn't understand what was happening. Then he heard the announcement. "American Airlines Flight 191 has crashed on takeoff. All emergency personnel to runway 32 right." James's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the terminal floor. The plane he'd just watched take off, the plane he was supposed to be on, crashed. Later, he learned the details. The left engine separated from the wing 31 seconds after liftoff. The plane rolled, lost control, plummeted into a field just beyond the airport, exploded on impact. All 258 passengers, 13 crew members, 2 people on the ground, 273 dead, 0 survivors. James sat in that terminal for 3 hours. Police and investigators questioned everyone who was supposed to be on the flight but wasn't. There were 7 of them. 7 passengers who'd missed Flight 191. James met them, compared stories. Every single one had experienced bizarre obstacles that morning. Robert Chen, businessman, age 41. His taxi never showed up. He'd called a reputable company, confirmed the pickup. The taxi just never arrived. He called again, they apologized, sent another. By the time it came, too late. Sarah Mitchell, teacher, age 35. Her car wouldn't start. Battery completely dead even though it had been fine the day before. Brand new battery, 3 months old. She tried jumping it. Nothing. Had to call a friend for a ride. Missed her flight by 10 minutes. David Walsh, engineer, age 28. Woke up violently ill. Vomiting, fever. Couldn't get out of bed. Thought it was food poisoning. By afternoon, symptoms completely gone, like he'd never been sick. Margaret Torres, nurse, age 47. Lost her driver's license that morning. Tore her house apart looking for it. Found it 3 hours later in her purse, exactly where she'd already checked 5 times. Christopher Lee, salesman, age 39. His apartment building's fire alarm went off. False alarm, but everyone had to evacuate. Stood outside for 40 minutes while fire department cleared the building. By the time he got to the airport, flight departed. Paula Sanchez, accountant, age 31. Traffic accident right in front of her car. She wasn't involved, but police held her as a witness. Took her statement for an hour, released her just in time to watch the plane take off without her. 7 people, 7 completely different obstacles, no connection between them. They didn't know each other, lived in different parts of Chicago, worked different jobs, booked their tickets at different times. But all 7 experienced synchronized bad luck that prevented them from boarding a flight that crashed. James went home that night and couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the morning, the alarm that didn't go off, the 6 red lights, the traffic accident that never happened on that route, the construction that appeared exactly where his detour led him. Every obstacle timed perfectly to make him exactly 9 minutes too late, not 20 minutes too late, which would have left him comfortably away from the disaster. 9 minutes, just enough to see the plane, to stand there and watch it leave without him, to witness the crash, almost like something wanted him to know how close he'd come. A mathematician James consulted later ran the probabilities. For one person to experience that specific sequence of failures preventing them from reaching a destination on time, approximately 1 in 8 million. For 7 people to independently experience unrelated failures preventing them from boarding the same flight, 1 in 47 million. Those aren't coincidence numbers. Those are impossibility numbers. But it happened. 7 people survived because reality conspired to stop them from boarding Flight 191. James kept his boarding pass from that day. He framed it, hangs it in his office. A reminder that something, somewhere for reasons unknown, decided he shouldn't be on that plane. And whatever that something was, it had the power to manipulate alarms, traffic lights, car batteries, human immune systems, and fire alarms to achieve its goal. James is 78 now. He's had 46 years to think about that morning. He became a paramedic after the crash. Saved 23 lives over his career. He wonders sometimes if that was the reason. If whatever saved him knew what he would become, knew the lives he would save, calculated that his death would break a chain of future events that needed to happen. Or maybe it was random. Maybe 7 people got lucky and 273 didn't. But James doesn't believe in luck anymore. Not after watching reality itself bend to keep him out of a metal tube that would be debris in 31 seconds. Sarah Chen was 26 years old when a phone call from a dead person saved her life. November 14th, 2023. She was driving home after a late shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Highway 94, 40 minutes outside Portland. Empty road. Dark. 11:47 p.m. Sarah was tired. Long shift. Double shift, actually. 16 hours. She was fighting to keep her eyes open. The white lines on the road were hypnotic. She rolled down the window, let cold air hit her face. Only 20 minutes from home. She could make it. Her phone rang. The sound jolted her alert. She glanced at the screen on her dashboard. The caller ID made her heart stop. The number displayed was her grandmother's home phone, the landline from the house her grandmother had lived in until she died. In 2011, 12 years ago. Sarah knew that number by heart. She'd called it 1,000 times as a child. But the line had been disconnected when the house was sold after her grandmother's death. Nobody had that number anymore. It didn't exist. Sarah's hands started shaking. She almost didn't answer. This had to be a mistake, a glitch, someone with a similar number. But something made her reach out and tap the answer button. Hello? The voice that came through the speakers was her grandmother's voice. Not similar, not close, exact. The same warm tone, the same slight Korean accent, the same way she pronounced Sarah's name with the emphasis on the first syllable. Sarah. That was all. Just her name. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. Grandma? She could barely speak. This wasn't possible. Her grandmother had been dead for 12 years. Sarah had been at her funeral, had watched them lower the casket. But this was her voice. Undeniable. Pull over. Now, don't drive. The voice was urgent, commanding. The way her grandmother used to sound when Sarah was a child doing something dangerous. Stop the car, right now. Sarah's rational mind screamed that she was hallucinating. Exhaustion, grief, stress. Her brain was playing tricks. But the voice was so real, so clear, and there was something in the tone that bypassed her rational mind and went straight to instinct. Pure panic. Her grandmother was terrified. Grandma, what's happening? Sarah's voice cracked. Pull over, Sarah, please, right now. The desperation in those words made Sarah's foot hit the brake without conscious decision. She swerved onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under her tires, bringing the car to a stop. The phone went dead. Complete silence. Sarah sat there, engine idling, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard. What the hell just happened? She looked at her phone. The call had lasted 23 seconds. The number displayed, her grandmother's old landline. She was alone on a dark highway at midnight, shaking, tears running down her face, no idea if she'd just experienced something supernatural or had a mental breakdown. 10 seconds passed. Then Sarah saw headlights in her rearview mirror. Coming fast, very fast, too fast. The lights were swerving. The vehicle was weaving across lanes. Sarah watched, frozen, as a pickup truck screamed past her stopped car at what had to be 90 miles per hour. The truck was exactly where Sarah would have been if she'd still been driving. Exactly. She watched it fly past, still swerving, and then she watched it lose control. The truck veered right, overcorrected left, spun completely around and slammed into the guardrail. The sound of metal tearing was deafening. The truck flipped, rolled twice, came to rest upside down in the median. Sparks and smoke. Complete silence. Then fire. Sarah sat there unable to move. The truck had passed exactly where she would have been 10 seconds earlier. If she hadn't pulled over, if she hadn't listened to the voice, she would have been hit head-on by a drunk driver going 90 miles per hour. She would be dead. The physics were undeniable. That truck would have obliterated her car. Sarah called 911 with shaking hands. Police and ambulance arrived. The driver of the truck was dead before they pulled him out. Blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit. Never saw Sarah's pulled-over car. Would never have seen her if she'd been in the lane. The police questioned Sarah. Why had she pulled over? She told them about the phone call, about her grandmother's voice warning her. They looked at her with concern, asked if she'd been drinking. She showed them her phone, the call log, 23 seconds, the number. Police wrote it down. Later, they investigated. The number Sarah received the call from was her grandmother's old landline, the line that had been physically disconnected in 2011. The phone company confirmed it. That number had not been in service for 12 years. It could not make calls. It didn't exist in their system. Yet Sarah's phone records showed an incoming call from that number. 23 seconds. The telecommunications company had no explanation. This is technically impossible, the technician told Sarah. That line is dead, has been for over a decade. There's no way for it to transmit a call. No way for a signal to originate from a number that doesn't exist in our network. But the call happened. Sarah's phone recorded it, and Sarah recorded the audio. She'd started recording calls after getting too many spam attempts. The voice was on the recording. Her grandmother. Clear as day. Pull over now, don't drive, stop the car, right now. Forensic audio analysis confirmed it was a genuine human voice. Not AI generated, not synthesized, not a recording played back. A real person speaking in real time. But the person was dead. Had been dead for 12 years. Sarah doesn't drive that highway anymore. She takes a longer route home. She keeps her phone charged always. Sometimes late at night she stares at her call log, at that entry from November 14th, 2023. 23 seconds that saved her life. She's tried calling the number back. It doesn't connect. The number you have dialed is not in service. Sarah went to her grandmother's grave a week after the incident, stood there and said thank you. She doesn't know if her grandmother's consciousness somehow reached across death to warn her, or if something else used her grandmother's voice because that was the only way Sarah would listen. She doesn't know if she's crazy, but she knows she's alive, and she knows that a call from a number that doesn't exist, from a person who doesn't exist, told her to pull over 10 seconds before a drunk driver would have killed her. Reality broke its rules. The phone system violated its own technical limitations. And Sarah survived. She's a trauma nurse now. Specializes in car accident victims. She saved 40 lives since that night. 40 people who would have died if Sarah hadn't been there. She wonders sometimes if that's why. If her grandmother knew what Sarah would become. If the call wasn't just to save Sarah, but to save all the people Sarah would save. Or if something larger is at work. Something that calculates futures and decides which threads need to remain uncut. Sarah sleeps with her phone next to her bed every night, waiting, hoping, terrified, that one day it will ring again, and she'll hear her grandmother's voice telling her what's coming. Michael Torres was 29 years old when an invisible stranger saved his life. March 17, 2024, New York City subway, 8:23 a.m. Michael was commuting to work same as every weekday. Graphic designer for an advertising firm. He took the same train every morning. Platform crowded with rush-hour bodies. Everyone staring at phones. Michael was checking his email when he heard the train approaching. The familiar rumble, the rush of air, the screech of brakes. Doors opened. People pushed forward. Michael stepped toward the train, moving with the crowd, ready to board. That's when someone grabbed his arm. Hard, impossibly hard. Fingers digging into his bicep with enough force to stop him mid-step. Michael turned, annoyed. A man stood there, mid-40s, wearing a dark coat, intense eyes locked on Michael's face. Don't get on this train. The man's voice was low, urgent, almost desperate. Michael tried to pull his arm free. The grip didn't loosen. "Excuse me. Trust me, you can't board this one." Other commuters were streaming past them, filling the train. Michael yanked his arm harder. The man's grip was like iron. "Let go of me. I saw what happens." The man's eyes were wide, pleading. "You cannot get on this train." Michael looked around. People were staring. This was weird. This was New York weird. "You're crazy. Let go or I'm calling security." The man's grip tightened impossibly. "Please, I'm begging you. Not this train. Wait for the next one." The doors chimed, starting to close. Michael made a decision. He shoved the man hard. The grip released. Michael stumbled back as the doors slid shut. The train began moving. Gone. Michael spun to confront the man, to demand an explanation, to maybe punch him. The man was gone. Vanished. Michael scanned the platform. Hundreds of people. No sign of the man in the dark coat. It had been 5 seconds. Nobody disappears in 5 seconds on a packed platform. Michael stood there, heart pounding, rubbing his arm where the man had grabbed him. It hurt. The grip had been brutal. He felt angry, violated. Some psycho had physically restrained him and made him miss his train. He pulled out his phone to report the incident. Then he heard the screaming. It came from the tunnel. Then the announcement. "Attention. There has been an incident on the southbound 6 train. Emergency services are responding. Please remain on the platform." Michael's stomach dropped. The 6 train. The train he'd just missed. His train. People around him were pulling out phones, checking news apps. Michael did the same. Twitter was exploding. Train derailment. 6th Avenue line. 2 stations south. Early reports. Multiple casualties. Michael felt cold. He pushed through the crowd to the transit officer at the platform entrance. "What happened?" "The train that just left." The officer's face was grim. "Derailment at 23rd Street. Don't have full details yet. But it's bad." By 9 a.m. the news was everywhere. The southbound 6 train had derailed at 23rd Street station. Mechanical failure. The third car jumped the tracks, crashed into the tunnel wall. 4 people dead. 23 injured. Michael checked his usual spot. He always boarded the third car, second door, stood near the middle. That was his routine. Every morning. Same car, same spot. The third car was where the deaths occurred. 3 of the 4 people who died had been standing near the middle of the car. Michael would have been standing right there. He would have died. Michael left work early, went home, sat on his couch staring at nothing. The man on the platform had saved his life. The man who vanished. The next day, Michael went to the subway station security office, told them what happened. They pulled the CCTV footage. Michael watched the screen as they played it back. There he was, standing on the platform, checking his phone. The train arrived. He took a step forward toward the train doors, and then he stopped. Just froze. For 30 seconds, Michael stood completely still, staring at nothing. His mouth was moving. He appeared to be having a conversation with nobody. The platform around him was crowded, but there was empty space directly in front of him. No man in a dark coat, no physical contact, no grip on his arm. The train doors closed. The train left. Michael stood there alone, then looked around, confused. The security officer looked at Michael. "You were alone. Entire time. Nobody touched you." "That's impossible. I felt him. I heard his voice. He grabbed my arm hard enough to..." Michael rolled up his sleeve. There was a bruise on his bicep, dark purple, finger-shaped. The officer stared at it. But the footage, they watched it again. 3 different camera angles. All showed the same thing. Michael, alone, talking to empty air. No man. No physical contact. Nothing. Michael went to a doctor. The doctor examined the bruise. "This is recent, within the last 24 hours. Consistent with someone gripping your arm with significant force. But nobody touched me. The cameras show I was alone." The doctor had no explanation. Michael has the footage saved on his phone now. Watches it sometimes, trying to understand. He felt the hand, heard the voice, saw the man's face. It was real, but reality says it wasn't. His arm says someone grabbed him. The cameras say nobody was there. 3 people, 3 impossible interventions. James Rodriguez and 6 others prevented from boarding Flight 191 by a synchronized cascade of failures. Sarah Chen warned by a phone call from her dead grandmother using a number that hasn't existed for 12 years. Michael Torres physically restrained by an invisible person who knew what would happen. 7 survivors from Flight 191, 273 dead. Sarah alive because she pulled over. 1 drunk driver dead. Michael alive because he missed his train. 4 people in that train car dead. In each case, reality bent, broke its own rules, defied probability, technology, physics, to save specific people while letting others die, and nobody knows why. Flight 191 was 46 years ago. Sarah's call was 2 years ago. Michael's encounter was 8 months ago. The incidents are getting closer together, more frequent, more people reporting impossible coincidences that saved them, strange warnings, unexplained obstacles, reality glitches that prevent death. Something is changing. Either we're becoming more aware of these interventions, or they're happening more often, or the rules that keep reality stable are starting to fail. James is 78 now. Sarah is 28. Michael is 29. They don't know each other, live in different cities, different lives, but they share the knowledge that they're alive for reasons they can't explain. That something decided they were worth saving, and they carry the weight of wondering why them and not the others. Why 7 people missed Flight 191, but 273 didn't. Why Sarah got the warning, but the drunk driver didn't. Why Michael was stopped, but 4 other people weren't. The answer might be that there is no answer, that reality is random, and they got lucky. But the mathematics say otherwise. The impossibility of the coincidences says otherwise. The bruise on Michael's arm from a grip that cameras couldn't see says otherwise. Reality is breaking its rules, and it's breaking them to save lives. The question isn't whether this is happening. The evidence proves it is. The question is what happens next, when the rules break completely, when reality stops being stable, when the glitches become too frequent to ignore. Are we living in a world that's slowly coming apart, or are we just finally seeing the strings that were always there? Either way, James, Sarah, and Michael are alive, against impossible odds, saved by forces they can't understand, living on borrowed time in a reality that might not be as solid as we think. The mathematics of what happened to James, Sarah, and Michael don't just break probability, they shatter it. A mathematician at Yale University analyzed the Flight 191 case in 1982. 7 passengers missing the same doomed flight through completely unrelated obstacles. He calculated the probability at 1 in 47 million. To put that in perspective, you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice in the same year than to have 7 random people independently prevented from boarding a specific flight by synchronized bad luck. Sarah's phone call violates telecommunications infrastructure. A disconnected landline that hasn't existed for 12 years transmitted a voice in real time. Phone carriers confirmed the technical impossibility. The line is physically cut. No signal can originate from that number. Yet Sarah's phone received a call. Her carrier's logs show it. 23 seconds of data transmitted from a source that doesn't exist. Michael's bruise proves physical contact. Medical examination confirmed someone gripped his arm with significant force. But 4 security cameras from 4 angles all show the same thing. Nobody touched him. He stood alone talking to empty space for 30 seconds while an invisible entity restrained him. These aren't statistical anomalies. They're impossibilities that happened, and they happened specifically to prevent deaths. A researcher at Northwestern who studies anomalous phenomena said it best. At random chance, events like these should occur once every 4 billion years. We've documented 3 major cases in the last 5 years. This isn't probability. This is pattern. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity in 1952. Meaningful coincidences with no causal relationship. You think about an old friend, they call 5 minutes later. You need a specific book, you find it at a yard sale the next day. Small synchronicities happen constantly. Studies from 2024 show 92% of people report experiencing them. Jung explained synchronicity as moments when the inner world of consciousness aligns with external events, a bridge between psyche and matter. But what happened to James, Sarah, and Michael isn't synchronicity. It's coordinated reality intervention. 7 alarms failing, 6 traffic lights turning red in sequence, a highway accident appearing exactly when needed. That's not coincidence bridging consciousness and matter. That's external manipulation of physical systems, which leads to the theory that terrifies and explains simultaneously. Simulation theory. If we exist in a programmed reality, glitches make sense. The Flight 191 survivors weren't meant to die in the simulation's narrative, so the program created obstacles. Sarah's warning was a message injection from outside the simulation layer. Michael's invisible stranger was an administrator avatar, visible to the targeted consciousness but not to the simulation's recording systems. The bruise is real because the contact happened, just not within the simulation's rendered reality. Tech entrepreneur and simulation theorist Anthony Peake argues that reality resembles a video game more than we'd like to admit. Some characters have plot armor. The program protects them because they're necessary for future events. James became a paramedic and saved 23 lives. Sarah works trauma response and has saved 40. Michael teaches crisis therapy and has helped hundreds. Were they saved because the system calculated their future impact? Because letting them die would break chains of causality that the simulation needs to preserve. The alternative is even stranger. Quantum consciousness. The idea that human awareness can perceive probability waves before they collapse into definite outcomes. At the quantum level, all possible futures exist simultaneously until observation forces one into reality. What if some minds can sense which futures lead to death and unconsciously avoid them? James's subconscious perceived the future where he boards Flight 191 and dies, so his mind sabotaged his alarms, caused him to hit red lights, created the traffic accident as a retroactive quantum effect to prevent that timeline. Sarah's grandmother didn't call from beyond death. Sarah's quantum consciousness reached backward through time, manifested as her grandmother's voice because that was the only warning her conscious mind would accept. Michael didn't see a stranger. He experienced a quantum echo of a timeline where he died, manifested as an external entity because his consciousness couldn't process it as internal knowledge. Physicist David Deutsch calls this the many worlds interpretation taken to its logical extreme. We're not in one timeline. We're in all timelines simultaneously. The people who survive impossible situations are the ones whose consciousness is quantum entangled across multiple probability branches. They perceive the death timelines and unconsciously shift into survival branches. The glitches, the interventions, the impossible coincidences, those are the seams where timelines merge. The evidence that we're constantly jumping between parallel realities and our linear perception of time makes it seem like external intervention. Either way, whether we're in a simulation being protected by administrators or quantum consciousnesses navigating probability branches, the result is the same. Reality bends for certain people, and nobody can predict who or why. The most disturbing question isn't how these interventions happen. It's why some people get saved while others don't. James and 6 others missed Flight 191. 273 people didn't. Sarah got the warning call. The drunk driver who would have killed her didn't. Michael was stopped from boarding. 4 people in that train car weren't. What determines who's worth saving? James asks himself this every day. He's asked it for 46 years. I wasn't special, just a sales guy. Why me? Survivor's guilt is a documented psychological condition, but James's guilt is compounded by the inexplicability of his survival. He didn't do anything to deserve it, didn't have a premonition, didn't make a smart choice. He was late because forces beyond his control made him late. Why? Research from University of Virginia studied near-death survivors. 76% reported developing a strong sense of purpose after their experience. Not just gratitude for life, an actual mission. James became a paramedic. 23 lives saved. Sarah works suicide prevention. 40 people talked down. Michael does trauma therapy. Hundreds helped. They weren't saved randomly. They were saved because their deaths would have prevented them from saving others. Reality calculated the ripple effect, determined that keeping James alive would result in 23 additional survivors downstream, that Sarah needed to be there for 40 people who would have died without her, that Michael's future work was necessary for hundreds of psychological rescues. The intervention wasn't about them. It was about everyone they would save, which means reality, or the simulation, or quantum probability, or whatever force is at work, can calculate futures, can see the consequences of death rippling forward through time, and can manipulate present events to preserve beneficial timelines. But that raises an even darker question. What about the 273 people who died on Flight 191? Were their futures calculated as less valuable? Did reality determine that their deaths wouldn't significantly disrupt important timelines, so they were allowed to die? Or worse, were their deaths necessary? Did the timeline require that disaster to happen, and James and the others were only saved because their specific deaths would have caused problems, but the crash itself needed to occur? The drunk driver who would have killed Sarah died instead. Was his death calculated as acceptable? As necessary to prevent Sarah's death, which was necessary to preserve her 40 future saves? Michael survived. 4 people in the train didn't. Were those 4 deemed expendable by whatever calculates these interventions? The mathematics are cold, brutal. If reality is protecting certain people because of their future value, then it's simultaneously choosing not to protect others, making determinations about whose life matters more. And the people who survive have to live with that knowledge. James saved 23 people, but 273 people died so he could. The exchange rate is horrifying. Sarah saved 40. 1 drunk driver died. Michael helped hundreds. 4 train passengers died. They're alive because reality made a calculation, decided their future actions outweighed the value of the people who died in their place. There's no comfort in that. Only the crushing weight of obligation. James didn't retire when he could have, stayed a paramedic until his body couldn't handle it anymore, because every life he saved justified the 273 who didn't get saved. Sarah works overtime constantly, answers hotline calls at 3 a.m. because she owes a debt to a drunk driver who died in her timeline branch. Michael treats patients for free sometimes. Pro bono therapy for people who can't afford it. Because 4 people died so he could board a different train. October 2025. Reports of reality glitches are at an all-time high. Reality glitches are increasing in 2025 is a viral video with 2 million views. TikTok hashtag glitch in the matrix has 4 billion views. Reddit communities dedicated to documenting these experiences have exploded. People reporting impossible coincidences. Technology behaving strangely at crucial moments. Strangers appearing with warnings that save lives, then vanishing. Deceased relatives calling or appearing in moments of danger. Traffic accidents that block routes seconds before disasters. Objects moving or disappearing exactly when needed. 3 theories for why it's intensifying. Theory 1. We're approaching a simulation singularity. The program is destabilizing as it reaches processing limits. More glitches, more visible administrator interventions, more obvious breaks in the code. Theory 2. Human consciousness is evolving. We're developing the ability to perceive quantum probability branches. The glitches were always there, but now more people can see them. Awareness is spreading. We're waking up inside the game. Theory 3. Multiple timelines are converging. Parallel realities bleeding together. What seems like impossible coincidences are actually events from adjacent timelines manifesting in ours. People experiencing moments from lives they lived in other branches. Scientists at Northwestern are researching what they call reality fluctuation events, documenting cases like James, Sarah, and Michael, looking for patterns. A peer-reviewed paper is scheduled for 2026. But the data they've collected already shows something alarming. The frequency is accelerating. In the 1970s, 1 major documented case per decade. In the 2000s, 1 per year. In 2024 alone, 17 verified cases of impossible life-saving coincidences. 2025 isn't over yet, and they're at 23. Whatever is happening, it's speeding up. So what do you watch for? How do you know if reality is trying to save you? The warning signs are consistent across cases. Repeated obstacles preventing you from going somewhere. Your alarm doesn't go off. Traffic is inexplicably bad. Your car won't start. You forget your keys. You miss the bus. Every obstacle feels like bad luck. But if multiple failures happen in sequence to stop you from reaching a destination, pay attention. James hit 6 red lights and a highway accident. That's not traffic. That's intervention. Technology glitches at crucial moments. Your phone dies right when you need it. Your GPS reroutes you for no reason. Your computer crashes when you're about to send an important email. These might not be malfunctions. They might be course corrections. Sarah's GPS had tried to reroute her that night. She ignored it. Then came the phone call she couldn't ignore. Strong, unexplainable feelings telling you to stop. Gut instincts that scream danger with no logical reason. The feeling that you shouldn't get on a plane even though you've flown 100 times. The urge to pull over even though you're not tired. The certainty that you need to leave a building right now. Michael felt nothing before the stranger grabbed him, but others report overwhelming dread seconds before near misses. Strangers who appear with specific warnings, then vanish. Someone you don't know approaches you with urgent information, then disappears before you can question them. Security footage shows you were alone, but you heard them, maybe saw them. The warning was real, even if the person wasn't. Communications from deceased loved ones. Phones ringing from disconnected numbers. Voices in empty rooms. Dreams of dead relatives telling you to avoid something. Sarah's grandmother called. Other cases report similar contacts. Messages from beyond, or quantum echoes, or simulation administrators using familiar faces. Whatever the source, the warnings save lives. Document everything. If you experience an impossible coincidence, write it down immediately. Date, time, location, exact sequence of events. Check security footage if available. Get phone records. Talk to witnesses. Because the rational mind will try to dismiss it later, will convince you it was normal. But if you document the impossibility in the moment, you preserve the evidence. James kept his boarding pass. Sarah recorded the call. Michael has the security footage and the bruise photos. Proof that something beyond normal probability occurred. And if you survive something you shouldn't have, pay attention to why. Not just, I got lucky. Ask what purpose your survival serves. James became a paramedic. Sarah does crisis work. Michael teaches therapy. They found their purposes, the reasons they were saved. If reality bent to keep you alive, there's probably a reason. A future action you need to take. Lives you need to save. A role you need to play. You're alive on purpose. Figure out what that purpose is. And the hardest part, accept that you can't save everyone. James has lived with survivor's guilt for 46 years. Sarah cries sometimes thinking about the drunk driver. Michael wonders about the 4 people in the train. The people who die while you survive weren't less valuable, weren't less deserving. The universe or simulation or quantum probability made a calculation you didn't ask for. You can honor the people who didn't survive by making your survival matter, by saving the lives you're positioned to save, by fulfilling whatever purpose kept you alive. That's all any survivor can do. Live deliberately, help others. Recognize that you're on borrowed time in a reality that might not be as stable as it appears. And stay alert, because if reality saved you once, it might need to save you again. The glitches are increasing. More people are surviving impossible situations. More interventions are occurring. We're entering a period where reality's rules are breaking down or becoming visible. Either way, the comfortable illusion that we live in a deterministic, predictable universe is shattering. James, Sarah, and Michael are alive because something decided they needed to be. They don't know what that something is. Don't know why they were chosen. Don't know if they'll ever understand. But they're alive. Against mathematics. Against technology. Against physics. Alive because reality broke its own rules. And they'll spend the rest of their lives wondering if they have done enough to justify that impossible gift.